All good. We're getting there. I
It's
don't
not
think I've
easy,
ever.
guys. I feel nervous. No, I'm joking.
I don't think I've ever been like completely ready to go on time.
I think we're on.
Cool. Great. Okay, great. We're live. I'm just wondering whether to do we do the kind of cursory wait for a couple of minutes for people to sign in, or do we just jump straight in?
So.
And
I think we should give people some time to get themselves ready.
Yeah, if you look really hard, you can see people filtering into the back of the room on YouTube. That's cool. No worries. Well, I mean, I guess the good thing is this thing is going to live live. So
Online,
I guess, yeah. So I guess if anyone needs to catch up on anything, they can do it afterwards. All right, cool. Let's get started then. For those that are tuned in, hello, hi, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to TuneCore's webinar from the UK. This is the first one that we've done here. So thanks a lot to everyone that's tuning in right now for joining us. We are going to spend the next little while talking to my good friend Panos from Believe. We're going to get stuck into everything that Panos does in his department at Believe. Panos is going to tell us much more about what Believe does in general, and certainly what he does as well. But this kind of whole focus of this session is really kind of based around the environment that artists are facing at the moment and finding themselves in with the with the current pandemic that's going on around the world, which has kind of left, I guess, a lot of artists with some uncertainties and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, there's going to be some room to ask some questions. So if you just pop some questions down in the comments below, our guys that are working really hard behind the scenes on this will get those questions to us, and we can try and make sure that you guys are included in this conversation as much as we are. This is ultimately here for you guys. So definitely bring up some questions as we go forward, and we'll try and get as many answered as we can. We'll do some maybe as we go along, but there'll also be a section once we've had our conversation where we can catch up on a bit more of a Q&A session in general. So cool. So Panos, so for those that weren't aware, so Panos heads up the artist relations department within Believe Distribution. So I'd really love for you Panos to kind of tell everyone that's listening what that role is. I guess some people might read that job title and think it's one thing, and some people might think it's another. So I'd love for everyone to hear specifically what your role is and what that entails at Believe.
Exactly. So I think like artist relations can be like a quite broad term, but as you said, so I'm sitting on the distribution side. I believe on the distribution department, and more specifically on the artist distribution. So the way it's split as a whole, we have our distribution department, which is kind of split in a team that looks after distribution for record labels, and my team, who is basically, it's called artist relations, and we look after direct to artist distribution deals. So my role basically is to run the team, look after our team members that like are looking after our clients. So at the minute we are a team of 4, including me, and we're expanding. So it's the team has only been around for 18 months. As under artist relations. So even though we have been doing like artist distribution for quite a while now, as a team we have been like the last 18 months. So I'm also looking after some of the key clients of our artist distribution roster. And yeah, basically just looking after, any clients that need kind of bigger support, artists that are a bit more advanced in their careers. And that's basically what we do.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, again with that, I mean, I think that's really interesting to break out into the different services that Believe provides. Can you like maybe tell everyone that's listening kind of what those different departments are and how they kind of differ from what you do? Because I think there's definitely any artists that are kind of working with a distributor or an artist services company, or even sometimes at a record label. They're kind of different departments that serve it, kind of different levels of artists, and certainly provide a different level of service through all of those different departments. So I think, yeah, it'd be really interesting, I think, to hear kind of, what those departments are at Believe, and how, your department may differ from, the label distribution or the artist services department, or, something like that.
Exactly. So, I would split it as, talking like from a Believe Group perspective, I would split it in 3 tiers of service, soon to be 4. Starting with a more kind of DIY distribution service like TuneCore. This is kind of it's a service on its own. It's mostly focused on like the tech solutions, getting the music out there, distributing the music, and it's a different business model where the artist basically retains kind of 100% of the royalties. That I'm sure you can explain better than me. So again, I'm sitting on the distribution department, which is kind of the middle tier of the service. So this is basically a more like hands-on kind of approach in terms of distribution. So you have the technology that we provide, but there's also the human element. That's the simpler way to put it. And then at the top of the service, at the top of the pyramid, we have artist services, which is basically, again, to make it simple, what a record label would do for you. So kind of have that, proper team with product managers, marketing managers, digital advertising, creative, and international infrastructure within the company. And it's a more like hands-on kind of approach, the artist. So there is no, a lot of people are wondering, and I think a lot of people, you and I are having conversations with, are wondering what is the best service, which there isn't really an answer to that. I think each department serves different artists depending on their needs. So I think as a whole, as a company, what we're trying to do is to serve, to best serve the artist at any level of their career. So, there is pretty much kind of like a home for any artist in any of our, tiers of service. So, you're seeing like artists on like very early using TuneCore, but you see like really, a really big artist using TuneCore as well. So there's no really kind of right or wrong, better than anything. It's what the client, what the artist needs for his career.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point, and definitely something that I think, well, there's two points to that. The first one that I'd love to kind of get into is just from your perspective, how does the distribution offer that you provide, in your department, I believe, how does that kind of fundamentally differ from the distribution offer that TuneCore provides to its artists?
Okay, so yeah, I think it's essentially like more what we do define as distribution is we basically offer distribution services, and so we offer distribution and services. So this means certain add-ons that an artist can get, and this is starting off the kind of human element I touched on earlier as well. I think we provide expertise, with having like in my team, as we call them, our artist relation manager on board, where is someone who is who knows how to handle campaigns, is there for the client to speak to on a daily basis, and can advise on on different elements of the campaign. Mostly we're focusing on digital, and try to advise clients on how to best how to best put like a digital campaign together. But we also advise on certain like external partners, like if that's PR or radio pluggers or anything that basically can help us like put the best campaign together. And then we also have the trade marketing element, which is to make it simpler, this is basically people, our team's talking to digital service providers, to Spotify and Apple, locally and globally. So this is another service that we offer to our clients. And then we offer synchronization as well. So we have also a global setup, a team that is out there to get like placements for our artists, working across different briefs, on TV, advertising, film. So this is quite I would say the human element, and the where the artists are kind of able to have that human contact and speak to someone and ask questions.
But much more in their kind of career development kind of way, less in a kind of support way. It's much more kind of an integrated approach with regards to delivering the release, strategy and the campaign for that particular release, and really kind of working as a team to kind of build that together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's great. And I think the other thing that you touched on, which again I think is super important to to just kind of underline, is that you're right. Kind of between the kind of the services that we provide, at Believe, from TuneCore, through to what you're doing, artist distribution, through to artist services. There's kind of basically room for everybody, kind of within that, depending on what level of service they may require at that time. Certainly from our perspective, we've got like 14, 15-year-old kids that have just kind of made their first track, and they're using TuneCore to put their tracks out, and that's an amazing opportunity and a really, really powerful thing, I think, for new music creators. But just as much as we've got that, we've also got kind of huge international worldwide artists that actually the TuneCore model, because they may have kind of in-house teams, or they prefer the way the royalty structure is set up, for whatever reason, they actually find using TuneCore is absolutely perfect for them as well. So yeah, you're right. It's really good to kind of to have all of those levels of service, I think, across all of our departments. But I think sometimes it's a little unclear as to kind of what you can expect from each. So I was just super keen to hear from you as to what that is as well.
I would definitely agree on that. And this is kind of, our mission, to kind of explain to, artists and their teams, like how things work, between departments, what their responsibility, what our responsibility and our promise is to the client, our brand promise, if you want, and what we expect from them. So just to give like an idea to people watching us, on artist distribution in the UK, we work very closely with a lot of like big management teams. So as you said, a lot of our clients, or you mentioned about TuneCore clients, they prefer the royalty structure because they basically have their own teams working a project, so they don't need necessarily a marketing manager, or they don't need like a digital advertising person, because they have those teams in-house. So this is basically covered, is a much bigger operation, and for them in the long run it's much more beneficial, like retaining 100% of the royalties. So on artist distribution, what we do, we work with a lot of clients, and we work with a lot of management companies. Some of them have their own structures, so we take care of the distribution side, we take care of the streaming, pitching, and the synchronization services when they need. And from their side, they can run everything that's related to marketing and kind of, building the artist in the long run. So, positioning, putting the artist proposition together. So kind of finding those key points, on artist development. And I think what I forgot to mention is also on distribution side, we also provide financial services that, a lot of our clients can tap into, which basically, gives those teams like, a budget to work with and kind of develop the whole project. So, whether that's again hiring PR or hiring radio pluggers, or using it for creative, it's kind of, we're essentially like partnering up with them. So it's kind of is more of a partnership, working together on the project.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and then, of course, them using the funds is kind of contributing to the overall mission and, delivering the project and the best campaign possible.
Yeah, sure. So actually, talking of campaigns and hiring pluggers, we actually just got a question through from Barton, who says, with radio plugging, is that something that you do in the UK only, or do you do that kind of in Europe and worldwide, kind of depending on the artist campaign?
So it really depends. On distribution, we basically act on an advisory level. So we obviously have those. So for those again, like who aren't aware of our global setup, Believe is present in about 45 territories around the world, which means we have the local expertise in each market that we can tap into. So this means if we have an artist that, for example, is doing like there's a heavy interest from the German market, and the artist, goes there and plays shows every now and then and kind of building his fan base, we can contact our, local experts and get recommendations. So we pretty much work globally because we have those offices in the local markets. And the idea is hiring local experts who kind of know, who is the best radio plugger, or, just have those local contacts that they can assist us with, local and global projects.
Yeah, sure. So if the artist has the audience in those territories, it's actually a really, powerful thing to have, local teams that Believe in offices in all of those key territories to actually understand that local market and really, really kind of plug in there, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. I think in like, in like this era, you have so many, you have like markets that streaming is kind of is at its maturity, but you have also emerging markets. So we kind of, we're a global company and we're trying to think internationally. So you have so many markets and so many, different like consumer behaviors, different languages. So having like local experts in each market is really important to kind of understand the market and kind of get the advice. Because I think what's really important is, to having experts in each market is, to exactly understand, what works in that market, what makes, like Spotify interested in a certain artist. Actually, does the genre work in that market, or is it something that, there's a very little market share on that genre? So that's really, really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks for that. Just winding it back a little bit. I think it'd be really good to kind of focus on the relationship between TuneCore and Believe, and certainly, your involvement in that on a kind of daily to weekly basis. So just to kind of give, I guess, people a very, very kind of quick history lesson. So TuneCore became part of the Believe family in 2015. And since then, we've been working really, really closely over the last 5 years to really make sure that all of the artists that we work with within our ecosystems, are ultimately kind of working on the best terms and have the best opportunities. So I think for me, obviously we work together, pretty closely, and certainly the talent scouts that are in your team, we're in constant contact with about artists and discussing artists that are on TuneCore, using the TuneCore platform. So I'd love to hear from you in kind of, in what ways the TuneCore and Believe kind of cross over, and how, and certainly, the artists that have been working with TuneCore that have then gone on to be, spotted and, by you and your team. How that happens and kind of how those artists then end up kind of working with Believe. How does that kind of cross over and the whole thing work from your side?
So the idea is we're obviously, as you said, like we're working very closely together. And aside the human element as well, we have access to the data, which is pretty much the most kind of powerful tool in this era, with like lots of music out. So it's really important to track and monitor like who is performing well, where there are spikes. So we have a dedicated team of people that they're looking at those data on a daily basis, and they're able to highlight in our meetings like either like really fast performing tracks or really high performing artists, and highlight them to us. And this is how we are kind of sourcing a lot of artists that, some of them, I was actually talking to an artist yesterday, who is in TuneCore. His music has been performing incredibly well. And I was really surprised when I was talking to him, because he has basically no music. He has like a lot of music out, but he doesn't have any teams helping him. So I was, we were kind of curious about, how did that happen and what was the strategy behind. And it turns out there was no strategy, or there was no, there was not like any kind of like recipe behind it.
Just good music.
Just him in his bedroom, I guess kind of getting the music out, using the tools you have available, Spotify for artists, to pitch the music, and you actually seeing, the audience reacting, you see the data reacting, and all those key metrics that, can make the algorithm work and basically be spotted from us. And, we kind of suddenly appear and say, hey, we've seen your music is performing well. We want to find out more about you, more about your project. And we basically, this is how we touch, and like, we touch base and, see, finding more about the artist, finding more about the plans, and try to kind of see where would that fit in our ecosystem within the service tiers we provide. So it might be something that, it might be an artist that he kind of needs, some money in order to go in and make some creative or advertising or hiring some teams. So I think this is kind of how it works, pretty much. So the relationship with TuneCore is that it's a very good tool for Believe to monitor artists that they are very early in their career, and basically spot them, and from there kind of bring them in and like explore all the possibilities and all the different options we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been really great from my side. Obviously, in the UK, I've been very involved in that process, and certainly kind of, liaising with our artists, that are on the TuneCore platform, that are using it, that, that you guys are kind of identifying and highlighting. And I think what's really positive from my side of things is that, when I actually kind of see the artists that are coming through and kind of what they go on to do. We've got, a couple of great, artists that have come through that way. IL is one of them. Heavy Rapids is another as well. That, these artists were, using the TuneCore platform. You guys were really into what they were doing. They were starting to kind of, build up a nice bit of traction. But what's been really great, especially, in IL's case, she came, you guys really kind of carved out a number of kind of different, things for her and her team, and ultimately kind of, facilitated her to develop, and, for her to really grow what she's doing, which has been good. And actually, we came out of a meeting this week, and it turns out that we've actually had now over 100 artists that have actually come through, that have been, kind of successfully, have had kind of successful discussions with the Believe team, that have then gone on to, sign deals with Believe, to kind of develop what they're doing, which I think is really powerful. It's really strong.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's been very helpful having TuneCore, because it means that, we don't necessarily have to, turn artists away, because there's also, uh, we get a lot of applications and a lot of submissions for artists that we can't work with them, or not all of them are at the stage where we feel that, we can invest in their music and like get them to the next stage. But there are artists that, it's very early in their career, so having TuneCore and be able to say, why don't you try this, why don't you try the best practices, and see how your audience reacts, see how what you can improve while you're working on building teams around you. And in this case, what we do, we basically kind of bring them into the Believe family, where we have our A&R scouting team kind of monitoring them constantly. Even if, like, the we don't get the data straight away, even if something is not like skyrocketing, we still have the option, to kind of see, basically track them and monitor them and see what they do with their career. And I think that's really important to get artists very early.
Yeah, definitely. So actually, artists, are actually in a really good position if they're using TuneCore, because then, you guys have got access to monitor what they're doing for a period of time whilst they're kind of growing to get themselves into a position where it might be a prospect for you to work with. So actually, it's good to use the platform in that way anyway, just to be visible, I guess. So
Exactly, yeah. And I think what you mentioned about IL, it's, I think, as you said, it's kind of, we play, like a role in the artist development, kind of taking an artist, from where they were and what they've done on their own to a certain extent, and kind of taking and, like, actually investing money and time and resources into their career and try to get them to the next level. So I think IL has been like a really successful example, in a lot of our markets, that we've been working her project in lots of different markets, and it has been like success globally. And I think her streaming numbers are quite impressive, for the level she's at.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. I think, yeah, I just think it's really good to kind of, shed some light on that, because I think people are aware, the TuneCore and Believe works together, but I don't think sometimes they always know how. So I think that's been really good to just kind of lift the lid on that and just, this is how it works. This is how we work together. So I think that's great. One of the things that's kind of obviously massively affecting the artists in general, and the music industry as a whole, is the current pandemic that we're going through with with COVID-19. How has this kind of current climate affected the way that you work, and how has it affected the way that you're kind of working with artists? And I mean, can artists, I mean, that was the topic of this really this question is, yeah, I mean, are you still signing artists during this period, or are you like, oh, no, we're gonna have to wait till this thing's done before we can do anything? Or like, how is that working for you? Can artists, is there still hope for artists out there that want to do kind of, want to maybe have a more integrated deal with a services company like Believe?
In short, the answer is yes. So we are still, signing artists. So I think it's, pretty much business as usual. I think we are lucky enough as a company to have the human power and have really strong, like, have like really strong headquarters with people working, constantly to kind of, analyzing data on streaming services, and our digital retail teams that they kind of speak to the stores and see, what's going on from their perspective. So the business, hasn't slowed down. So we haven't slowed down in terms of like signing artists. I think, generally what we see is, streaming consumption, during the COVID-19 situation has dropped in certain, like for certain services, like maybe Spotify or Apple. In other services, like YouTube, actually the views have been, increasing constantly. But the good news is that people, have been in confinement and people have been at home, and the subscriptions number going up, which means more customers, more opportunity for artists to actually kind of more like opportunity to get heard and like more opportunity to bring new fans in, which I think it's quite important. So I think from our side, there has been, I think it's the best time as an independent artist to release music. There is no as much competition. If we look at the major label landscape, all the big projects have been moved to the end of this year or beginning of next year. So I think as an independent artist, there's an opportunity out there to go out and kind of get heard basically. And then we work closely with Spotify and Apple and other streaming services. And for them, there hasn't been like any change in the way they operate. So the playlisting and all the featuring and exposure things they provide to artists, these are all like normal. I think the situation has affected and talking like in the UK, rap kind of hip hop grime scene, if you will. I think it has affected the way, for example, rappers, like they pretty much release music with videos. It has affected that. So there is some sort of kind of delay in maybe people like releasing music, but I would say generally it hasn't impacted that much. And we're still kind of out there looking for artists.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two really key things I think that you've mentioned there, which are definitely worth noting. Is that even though the consumption, people's kind of listening habits, some of those trends, because they're not listening to music on the commute, or they're not they haven't been kind of in their normal environment to listen to music. In some ways the consumption has gone down, but like you said, the subscriptions have actually gone up because people are they've got more time to think about, oh, okay, great. And what that means is two things: is that there's going to be more users on those platforms in the long term, so hence more people to listen to your music. And I think the second thing is currently the way that the actual payment distribution works with those services is based on subscription and the pool of that subscription money. So that's actually quite a positive thing. Definitely kind of moving forward. And the second thing is that I wanted to kind of mention is I noticed, so you guys have been, on the Believe side have been, certainly with Dennis, CEO of Believe, has been really prolific, in the music press and in the trade press, kind of expressing a really positive message around independent music and independent artists and stuff like that. And that's been really good to see. There was like a marketing playbook and stuff, wasn't there, that he, kind of put out, I think, as well. Tell us a bit more about that. That'd be great.
So again, our central teams have put together a creative marketing playbook, which is, in short, best practices for artists during kind of the COVID-19 situation and during like the confinement. So I think there are also a couple of like really key examples of some of our international artists and like case studies where people can see how they actually work. And I think for everyone is really for any person that is watching us now, I think it's really good to kind of go out and go in there and find the playbook. I don't know if we can like paste it in the link below. Probably.
Yeah, I'm sure we can have someone put it in the video description or something.
So I think if you type creative marketing playbook Believe on Google, it should come up on music business worldwide. But it's essentially like a really good tool for people to kind of get ideas, see how you can use streaming platforms and social media platforms during this situation that we all live in, and kind of get the best for your music and for your campaign. So I think there's even best practice for services for Facebook, for Spotify, for TikTok. So it's quite broad in terms of what it's covering.
Yeah, sure. I think that's again a really interesting point you made with regards to the a lot of the noise that will be out there. Typically around this certainly this time of year and towards the end of the summer. It's interesting to note that quite a lot of big projects, a lot of stuff from major labels is being pushed back, and I guess essentially that kind of creates a bit of a landscape for independent music to really kind of get heard. Is that the general sort of advice you're giving to the artists that you work with at the moment? I mean, and Believe in general, are you encouraging artists to record and release and during this period and kind of make the most of it?
We do, yeah. I mean, again, it's not the easiest time in terms of if you're a bedroom producer or if you have access to the studio and make electronic music, for example, that you can produce and then kind of mix master everything or send it to someone else. Happy days. I think it's probably a little bit harder for people that have to go out and for like 5-piece bands and people that have to be in studios lots of times. So I think, yeah, if the music, I would say, if the music is available and if people can like get the music done, I think it's a really good time to put the music out there and kind of cut through the noise basically and again, it doesn't mean you just put out the music and magic happens. You still kind of need to work your strategy and work your all like 101 kind of things that an independent artist has to do. But I think, yeah, like with our clients, we're trying to support them as much as we can with advice, with weekly kind of updates on the market, which is quite important, like market intel, what's changing within the streaming services, or what if the consumption is going up or down. So we're trying to provide our clients as much info as possible, so they can go actually take that in and kind of see how that affects their campaign, or is there an opportunity or is there a threat there for their campaign. So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. That's great. Yeah, that's great to hear that every, language and general kind of approach to this is just, try and take this negative and do something positive with it, I guess.
I think it will be good for you to mention as well the kind of the TuneCore situation and what's been happening, during lockdown, the amazing spike.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been super interesting to see. Again, because we kind of talk about what's happening in the market and what we're seeing with kind of trends with people releasing and stuff like that. But say we did some year-on-year analysis from I think it was from the second or third week of March for the kind of following 6 to 8 weeks, and what we saw was kind of year-on-year was absolutely astounding. We had probably, I think in some weeks we were over 100% more releases coming through through TuneCore than there were in the same time in the previous year. And I think that was just, for me, it was just really encouraging. It was just like such a positive thing to see when you just see this kind of graph from last year that was kind of going like this, and then all of a sudden COVID hit. I was expecting it to go, but it just absolutely flew up. And what that tells me is that a number of different things, I guess, but just it was so great to see people were just kind of taking the time that they couldn't go out or couldn't go to work or whatever, they were finishing off tracks and actually kind of getting their music together, and they had some headspace to kind of finish off some projects they were working on and stuff like that. And our marketing team at TuneCore were kind of really quick to communicate with artists around this kind of time, and same as Believe, really just kind of encourage people to be like, okay, look, this is obviously a really tough time for everyone, but if we can make the most of it, then I'm sure we'll be in good shape kind of moving on. So yeah, it was really positive to see.
Yeah, this is a good point actually, like having a partner where this is this is the first time we kind of experiencing this, and I think having a partner on board where they can, because in the first 2 weeks no one knew what's going to happen. I think most of our clients were concerned about, should we release, should we not? So I think having a partner who can kind of advise you and guide you and kind of, see the opportunity, but like, fact-based opportunity. So, doing kind of speaking to, the key streaming source and see how they react from their side, or actually doing like a weekly analysis and get data. I think it's really important, and this is really where value comes for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, look, I've got a couple more questions to run through with you, Panos. But before I do that, I just want to mention a reminder to leave some questions down below. The team are gonna feed me that we can it could be off topic, it could be this is your chance to ask and put Panos and I on the spot.
Please as well.
Yeah, so please do drop in some questions, and we'll catch up with a couple of those in a second. But I just wanted to kind of finish off with our conversation, Panos, really with kind of some stuff that's maybe just some kind of general tips and advice from you, and I'll chime in as well, of course, but just around, kind of stuff. If there are artists out there that are listening to this, and obviously we know that there are, that are potentially kind of looking to hook up with somebody like Believe, to have a more kind of integrated deal where they can have that kind of experience in terms of trying to have someone on the team that can advise on release strategy, that can try and develop their career, that can maybe kind of offer some kind of small finance to really kind of get the wheels moving, and that kind of thing, all of the great services that Believe provides. What's the kind of stuff that really the artists need to do, just to kind of get their 101 stuff down? It'd be really good, because I think sometimes, I mean, I do this with with music that I'm putting out anyway. I always have like a release strategy, and that within that strategy there's always a certain criteria that I need to make sure that I'm checking off, and I've been doing this like years now, but I still make sure that I do it just to make sure that just to make sure that you don't miss anything crucial, or forget to do something, or expect that something is going to happen in with 2 weeks notice, when actually you needed 6 weeks to really kind of to kind of plan it. What's some of the stuff that you can kind of advise to artists around that?
I think it really depends from artist to artist, I mean, from the level they're at, but there are some things that they are kind of crucial to everyone. So I think you touched on this briefly. Delivering the music as early as possible, it's number one, I would say. So having like a ready product, and that means artwork, metadata, audio, all that delivered very early on, whether you're using TuneCore or you're using Believe or anyone. I think this is crucial, and I would say this is very important, and it's important in this modern age when we have algorithmic playlists, and things can really turn into your favor by delivering something very early. So this is, I would say, number one, and then just keeping it short, because again, I think it depends from artist to artist. I think kind of look after like your digital properties, I would say. Social media, I think this is something very important, not just for the fans, but also when you're trying to get to build a team around you. So whether you are an independent artist, and you're just putting music out, and you are looking to get a radio person on board, or a PR person on board, or get a distribution company on board where they can actually fund your music. I think like having everything in good shape, and make sure you look after your digital properties, everything like looking nice, and using the streaming platforms as well. Just try to use the tools like Spotify or Apple provide as much, or YouTube. So I think this is really important, because that kind of gives like it gives like to people that are looking at you, it gives like if it leaves a feeling that this artist is hardworking, and it's worth kind of investing my time or my money on this project. So these are things we look at, and I think it's really important for the artists to kind of put the hard work in the beginning themselves as well, because at the end of the day they are the ones that they're driving the project. So having artists that are really good at handling like social media or doing as much as they can to get kind of get the best of their project are the ones that move forward. And
that's actually a really good point. I think the quite often, again, it's a conversation I've had a lot with artists that some artists, and not all, but some artists are kind of under the impression that actually, if you sign with a label or if you sign with a partner or a services company, that actually that's the opportunity for them to take their foot off the gas. And now all of a sudden somebody else is going to do all that stuff for you. And actually, for what I do, I flip that on its head and say, do you know what? That's actually day one. This is actually where you need to start working even harder. Like that's to really make that work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really good point. And actually seeing the question that just came through now, which is what kind of growth opportunities does signing with a label provide to you versus staying independent? I think this is kind of what it is about. So it's kind of like a label will kind of provide the team for you. Staying independent is you have to build a team around you. It doesn't mean like you necessarily taking care of it, but you might get a manager on board who is actually going to be responsible for your project and build like different teams around you, like creatives or radio or PR, international teams. But at the end of the day, the artist is the one that is driving the project forward, and it's pretty much the kind of the CEO of the whole operation. And if this is kind of the driving force, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. The way that I always illustrate it to people is that ultimately what you're doing, whenever you're whether you're staying independent or whether you're signing with a label or working with any kind of partner, essentially what you're doing is you're bringing in expertise. And that doesn't matter whether that expertise is at the label, but that's why you would sign to a label, is because ultimately you're signing to the label because that label has got the expertise and can give you the things that you can't give to yourself. So that's why you would be signing with a label. The staying independent, is great, and tons of people do that. And as I say, we have tons of successful artists on TuneCore that do that. But what you'll find is that the really, really successful ones, they still bring in that expertise into their own team. So rather than plugging into a team, they build their own team. And that really is the fundamental difference between a label and staying independent. But ultimately, you still need to make sure that you've got people around you. If you can't, I can be out there and I can say to you now that me personally, I'm not fantastic at social media. I know for a fact that there are people out there that are much, much better equipped to deliver a social media campaign for a new release I'm putting out than I would be able to do for myself. And so I need to say to myself, okay, cool. Well, I need to bring someone on my team or work with a third party that can actually provide that service and perform that task for me. So that's really all it is. And that's the way to boil it down for me anyway.
I think that's it. That's spot on. And I think this is, it's kind of the best time to be an independent artist. There are so many companies, offering services and, different levels of service and kind of, funding and investment, where if you want to stay independent, because he wouldn't have access. That was before the internet era. He wouldn't have access to, like getting exposed basically to a bigger audience. But now there's no excuses. You have all those platforms, and you have all those tools that can help you take your career to next level. And then you have the companies that offer you and kind of amplify what you're trying to do. So I think, there's no there's no like better time to be an independent artist. But the bottom line is that it requires where a major record label could take you, in like a year, either become a big pop star or crash. You can get yourself, within 3 years or 5 years. But at the end of the day, if you look back, you kind of have, still your rights retained. You have control of your music and you're creative, and you don't have to wake up and kind of do something that you don't want to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question on here that kind of relates to some of the stuff that we were talking about general advice and kind of getting yourself market ready or whatever. And the question is kind of related to what we were discussing earlier. And it's when you distribute on TuneCore, what makes you stand out to get noticed by Believe? For you, what's that thing that's making the artists coming through TuneCore? What's making them stand out to you and your team?
So I would say there isn't like the, again, like kind of the thing that I would say you need to tick and like we take you on board. I think it's a combination of things. A lot of it depends on, again, different artists, different genres. But I would say we're looking at artists that have already, some sort of music out there, maybe, or some artists that they are already, way kind of, if you want to say, like ahead of being a bedroom producer. So someone who has taken the first steps, someone who has maybe like teams on board, and that we can actually amplify what they're actually doing. But saying that, we have signed artists purely based on the music, and purely based on, teams that have brought us the music, and we know that those people can work the music really well. I think what is also really important is, and what you're trying to see, and what affects decision making, I would say it's kind of the engagement. So we look at social media, we look at streaming, we see, there's like numbers can be fluctuated, if I'm using the correct word, sometimes.
Yeah. Inflated.
Language barrier. You can see like, you kind of have to be able to translate the data and see, is there actually a fan base? Is the artist, are the streams driven just purely from playlist, from playlist placements, which it's an ideal scenario, but I think there is no the strongest asset an artist can have is the fan base. So having people that are ready and are engaging with you, are ready to consume your music when it drops. I think this is the most important asset an artist has, and I think this is what everyone like really should aim building before kind of signing to a label or talking to someone in terms of like getting the bigger deals. I think everyone like should focus kind of on building their fan bases, even if that's like 5-10 people. Keep them engaged, keep them happy, and while you're of course being true to yourself as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really key as well. Just kind of having that, unique voice as an artist. There are obviously, there's a lot of artists out there now. It's great that we're seeing so many, creatives out there, and it's great that we're in, we have services for everyone to use and get their music out there. I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I think it's really important to really kind of think about your creative voice. And that's one of the things that certainly when I'm, kind of doing artist workshops and doing kind of one-to-ones and that kind of stuff, thinking about your creative voice, I think is super, super important when, not only for kind of standing out to anybody else that you might want to partner and work with, but really to kind of build your audience and really to kind of have people that are actually going to take notice of you in this, in this kind of, day and age, really. Like that's really, really important. And the other thing that I always kind of bring up that people, and I think a lot of artists really forget about, is songwriting, like having good songs. and actually taking the time to make sure that that your songs are fantastic. And when I kind of think about it, it's like, do you know what? Without songs, none of us in the music, no one in the music industry has a job. Quite literally, there is nothing you can do in the music industry if there were no songs. And it's like that, so for me, it's kind of thinking about, from an artist's perspective, it's thinking to myself, okay, cool, what can I do to make my songs even better? And then all that stuff afterwards is kind of, that then all starts to slot into place. Think about your songwriting, think about your creative voice. If you can nail those two things down, all of that kind of, tertiary, superficial stuff, building your, good presence on social media and having, getting your visual assets together, all of that stuff will become so much easier if you've got a really clear idea on those two things.
I think this is like really important, and I think I mentioned it too. I think it's exactly what you said, and I've mentioned to a couple of workshops I've done. It's going back to basics and think how I can improve my most valuable asset, which is and the thing that I can actually control better than anything else, which is my music, my creative voice. How do I versus the next artist? How am I different? And kind of work your craft, and I think the rest can be built, and you can take the right steps with patience and hard work. I think in the streaming era, I think what is happening, quite frankly, is a lot of there were a lot of overnight successes, and it's something that the internet and the digital era kind of encouraged, and a lot of artists broke very quickly because Spotify or Apple or YouTube kind of supported them from day one. And it's becoming more it's not becoming harder, but you need to have a proper plan and strategy now. So I think the challenge, talking to a lot of our potential clients or clients, is that a lot of them see what is happening. They see the result, but they don't see what has been what has gone into it to make it happen.
Exactly.
We've been working recently on a project of a new kind of new singer-songwriter. Got amazing support from Spotify, but before we even signed it, before we actually said we want to sign this, the management company has been working on this project for the last 12 months, actively putting it in front of their own contacts. So they've done all this groundwork, building teams and presenting it to key people before they actually come to us and say, we're ready, we have the music, we have done those things, what can we do to kind of better it? And people see, oh, this artist has streamed 1 million times only one song within a month, but they don't see the 12-month work that went before even coming to us. So
absolutely,
important for people to kind of think of, and think that yes, overnight success can happen because we are in digital era. You can see how things react quickly, and with streaming and with TikTok and those platforms, things can blow up. But it's not the case for everyone, and I would say it's not the case. It's not the case for it's for the many. It's not the case, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. So we've got maybe a couple more minutes. So if you want to get any last minute questions, just drop them down there, and we'll try and answer them if we can. But yeah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity, Panos, to maybe talk about a couple of the projects that you're working on right now that you're finding exciting, and it'd be cool to hear about some tips for artists that are just about to come out and that we should look out for. I think that would be great.
I don't really want to leave anyone outside because they're all our babies.
It's like being asked to choose your favorite child.
But I'm going to mention a recent success we had with a band from Scotland called Vistas. They are actually the next Spotify Radar UK artist, which is quite a big commitment from Spotify UK. And basically, it's a 3-piece band from Scotland. The debut record just started like it was like number 21 in the official charts in the UK. Very, very big success, and something that happened during the COVID-19 situation, which was quite challenging, and we kind of like with the management and their teams, they've decided from there on that the band has to be true to their promise and to their fans, keep the same release date. We encourage that, so I think it's a really good one. And if I can mention another one, there's a band that I'm really liking it. This is kind of personal taste. It's called Feng Suave, and they are from Amsterdam, from the Netherlands. Quite global campaign for fans of like alternative soul music. Yeah, I would say these are two projects, and sorry to everyone else if
I'm sure they won't mind. We're kind of running low on time now anyway, so it would have been difficult to do everything that you've ever worked on. All good. Cool. I don't think we have any more questions, and I think we're at the top of the hour. So Panos, I just want to say thanks so much for taking some time out to join us for this first session. It's been really insightful to kind of to understand how TuneCore and Believe works together. Certainly what you do at Believe, and how you integrate and work with artists, and what kind of opportunities are available there. I think that's really valuable for our artists to hear, for sure, or any artist to hear. So thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it.
Okay, I hope everyone got something out of this, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So where can people find out more about Believe and Believe services?
So we have our website, believemusic.com. There's also a submission form that it's still a work in progress. I think there's like a kind of basic version up there for people that want to submit their music. So these are like actually submissions that come directly to our A&R scouting team, and we do go through all of them. So feel free for anyone to kind of submit your music over there.
But in the meantime, keep growing what you're doing using the TuneCore platform, and you guys are going to see it when it's the right time anyway. So awesome. All right. Thanks a lot for your time, Panos, and thanks to everyone that's been tuning in as well. And thanks a lot for the people that asked questions. There's some really good stuff in there. So hopefully we've managed to answer most of that for you. But please look out for the next session. So we'll have we're hoping to do a few of these and have different guests in and talk about stuff that you guys want to hear about. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But in the meantime, for now, take care and stay safe.